I could feel it in the air, the stillness that came with the empty house. 4 years, our home had been a whirlwind of kids, activities, and constant movement. But once our youngest left for college, everything seemed to slow down. The house was quieter than it had ever been, and Jasmine seemed different. I noticed it immediately. Jasmine had always been a whirlwind of energy, so involved with the kids, their school events, and everything that made our family tick. But once they were both out of the house, she started to drift. At first, I thought it was just a phase. A typical reaction to the emptiness that comes with the kids leaving home. But as days turned into weeks, the emptiness settled deeper into her. I could see it in the way she sat at the kitchen table, sipping her coffee and staring out the window, as if searching for something that wasn't there. It didn't take long for her to decide that she needed a change. She started working out, something she had dabbled in before but never fully committed to. Now, though, it was different. Every day without fail she was at the gym. I tried to support her at first. "That's great, Jasmine," I would say, genuinely happy to see her taking care of herself. I could tell she was trying to fill the void, trying to find some sense of purpose again. And I didn't mind the idea of her focusing on herself. In fact, I was proud of her. We had been married for 12 years, and life had settled into a comfortable, predictable rhythm. Perhaps she needed this, something to reinvigorate her. But then, slowly I began to notice a shift. It wasn't just the time spent at the gym, it was her whole attitude. Her focus seemed to narrow in on herself. It started small. She would talk more about her body, her workouts, her diet. "I've lost 2 pounds, she'd say with a smile, as if it was an accomplishment to be celebrated. I didn't mind at first. We all had our routines, our victories, our personal goals. But as weeks passed, it wasn't just the weight she was losing, it was something deeper. Jasmine began to pull away from me both physically and emotionally. Her mornings became dedicated to yoga, protein shakes, and running on the treadmill. I'd come downstairs for breakfast and she'd already be in the middle of a workout, sweat dripping from her face. She'd give me a distracted smile but wouldn't engage in conversation. At night, instead of watching our favorite shows together, she'd scroll through fitness blogs, posting photos of herself in workout gear, updating her social media accounts with quotes about self-love and health. Her followers began to increase. People were commenting, complimenting her on her dedication, on her transformation. The attention fed her, fueled her in a way that I didn't understand. I wasn't a stranger to the world of social media, but seeing how Jasmine's self-worth seemed tied to the number of likes or comments she received left me uneasy. It wasn't just her body changing, it was like she was changing into someone I didn't recognize. The more she worked on herself, the more she pulled away. I would sit at the dinner table watching her excitedly talk about her workout plans for the next day or showing me a new, progress picture of herself. She looked amazing, there was no denying that. But it wasn't just the physical transformation that caught my attention, it was the way she spoke. The way she reveled in the admiration of others, the praise from strangers who were now following her every move. I could see it in her eyes, the satisfaction of being noticed, of being desired. And with every passing day, I found myself becoming less and less a part of her world. One evening I came home from work and she was sitting in front of the mirror, snapping selfies. The room was dimly lit, and the soft glow from her phone screen cast shadows on her face. She caught my reflection in the mirror and smiled, but it wasn't the smile I knew. It was different, more self-satisfied, as if she was seeking approval from someone, anyone. The moment felt off. There was something about the way she looked at herself, as if she was trying to confirm her own worth in the reflection. "Hey, how was your day?" I asked, trying to keep things normal. "Great," she replied, not taking her eyes off her phone. "Just finished a killer workout." She paused, tapping the screen a few times. "I hit a new personal best today." She seemed proud of herself, but her words felt hollow to me. She wasn't sharing the moment with me, she was sharing it with the world. I tried to talk to her about it that night after we'd gone to bed. I wanted to understand what was happening. I wanted to know if she was okay. But the conversation didn't go the way I hoped. She brushed me off, saying I didn't understand how important it was to feel strong, to feel in control of her body. And, in a way, I did understand. I knew that we all needed something to anchor us, something to make us feel alive. But it felt like she was slipping away, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't seem to hold on. The weeks passed and the distance between us grew. Jasmine became more focused on her workouts, her followers, her image. I became more invisible. I tried to fill the silence with work, with hobbies, with anything to keep my mind occupied, but it didn't change the fact that we were drifting apart. I could see it in the way she looked at herself, in the way she enjoyed the attention from others. It wasn't enough that I loved her. It wasn't enough that we had built a life together. Jasmine wanted something more, something I couldn't give her. And I couldn't help but wonder, where did I fit into this new life she was creating? Was I still a part of it? Or had I become just another fixture in the background of her carefully curated existence? I wasn't sure what was happening to us, but the longer it went on, the more certain I became of one thing. Something was changing and I wasn't sure I could stop it. I had never seen her like this before. Jasmine had always been beautiful, but now it was different. She wasn't just beautiful in a quiet, understated way, she was radiant in a way that demanded attention. Her transformation wasn't just physical, it was as if she had unlocked a new level of confidence, one that I didn't fully understand. And at first I tried to appreciate it. I encouraged her. I told her how proud I was. I even admired her strength and dedication. But soon I started feeling like I was an outsider looking in on a life that wasn't mine anymore. It all came to a head at Ryan's birthday party. Ryan had been one of my closest friends for years, and his parties were always a highlight. This one, however, was different. It wasn't the party that had changed, it was Jasmine. The way she entered the room with that confident stride, her newly toned figure accentuated by the dress she wore, everything about her screamed attention. And the room noticed. I watched as heads turned when she walked in. She wasn't just in the room, she was the center of it. People were flocking to her, offering compliments on her appearance, admiring her confidence, her poise. She ate it up. She wasn't the same woman who had come to these parties before, talking to old friends and spending time with me. Now she was the life of the party, her energy contagious, her every move drawing eyes. I felt it then, the sting of jealousy, of being ignored, of being invisible. There I was, standing at the bar, holding a drink and watching as my wife laughed and chatted with everyone around her. Ryan was there, as usual, his hand casually placed on her back as they talked. And it wasn't just Ryan. There were other men too, businessmen, even some of our old friends who couldn't stop talking about how amazing she looked. Jasmine was glowing, and all I could do was watch from the sidelines, a man in his own marriage who no longer felt like he was the most important person in the room. She didn't seem to notice my discomfort. Or maybe she just didn't care. As the night wore on, I couldn't help but feel a deep pit in my stomach, a gnawing sense that something wasn't right. It was one thing for her to be the center of attention at a party, it was another to see the way she thrived off it. She laughed and smiled, basking in the attention, posing for photos, her eyes lighting up whenever a man complimented her. I caught the way she lingered just a bit too long with Greg, a wealthy businessman who had been circling around her all night. I tried to shake off the feeling that had settled over me. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe it was just her newfound confidence. But it wasn't just that. It was the way she looked at herself, the way she soaked in the admiration from others as if she needed it to validate her existence. I had never seen Jasmine so consumed by the approval of others. We ended up leaving the party earlier than I had expected. Jasmine was thrilled, her energy high, her cheeks flushed from all the attention. She didn't seem to notice that I was distant, that I hadn't joined in on the jokes or the dancing. I was there physically, but emotionally I was somewhere else. Somewhere far away from the woman I had married. In the car ride home, she talked non-stop about the party. How much fun she had, how everyone couldn't stop talking about how incredible she looked, how Greg had been so charming, and how Ryan kept complimenting her transformation. But I wasn't really listening. I couldn't focus on her words because all I could think about was how easily she had slipped into this new persona, this new version of herself that didn't seem to need me anymore. "Do you think they liked me?" she asked, her voice light and playful. I forced a smile, not because I didn't think she looked amazing, but because I was struggling with something deeper. "Yeah," I said quietly. "I think they really did." She turned toward me, a bright smile on her face. "I'm just so glad that I'm finally getting the recognition I deserve." And there it was again, the words that stung. The recognition she deserved. It wasn't just about her. It wasn't about us anymore. It was about her validation, her need for external approval. It was a concept I couldn't wrap my head around, and it was becoming clearer by the day. Jasmine wasn't looking for validation from me anymore. She was looking for it from the world. From anyone who would tell her that she was beautiful, strong, and desirable. I didn't respond to her question. The words I wanted to say, the feelings I wanted to express, felt stuck in my throat. Instead, I just focused on the road ahead, the silence between us heavy with the weight of unspoken truths. By the time we got home, I was exhausted, not physically but emotionally. I had always been the man who knew how to communicate, who prided himself on being understanding and open. But Jasmine's transformation left me fumbling for answers I couldn't find. And no matter how much I tried to convince myself that it was just a phase, that everything would return to normal, I couldn't ignore the fact that we were drifting apart. Jasmine seemed too caught up in the reflection of her own image to notice. She was already pulling out her phone, scrolling through the pictures from the party, replying to messages, and basking in the glow of the attention she had just received. I stood there watching her, feeling more alone than ever. It had been weeks since Ryan's party, and the tension between Jasmine and me only grew. She continued to focus on herself, her body, her image, and her increasing need for validation. I tried to keep up, to tell myself that this was just a phase, but deep down I knew it wasn't. She wasn't the same woman I had married. I could see it in her eyes, in the way she'd look at herself in the mirror, the way she talked about her workouts, and the way she lit up when anyone complimented her. Jasmine was becoming someone else, someone I wasn't sure I recognized anymore. The distance between us became a chasm. It was subtle at first, little things that I brushed off. But the more time passed, the more it felt like she was living in her own world, a world where I was no longer needed. I'd try to talk to her, but conversations always seemed to circle back to her workouts, her progress, her new clothes, and the attention she was receiving from others. She was always smiling, always upbeat, as if she had discovered a new version of herself that was far more important than anything I had to say. One night after dinner, she surprised me with an announcement. "I've been thinking a lot about this lately, and I think it's time I do something big for myself," she said, sitting across from me at the kitchen table. The way she said it, with such excitement, made me feel like the ground beneath me was shifting. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral, but I could feel the tension building in my chest. It had been a while since we had discussed anything serious, anything that didn't revolve around her latest workout or diet trend. "I'm going to Paris," she said, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "Greg and I are planning a trip, a once-in-a-lifetime adventure. I've always wanted to go, and now I finally have the freedom to do it." I sat there, frozen. Paris? With Greg? The words echoed in my head, but I couldn't process them. Who was this woman sitting across from me? The woman I had loved for 12 years had just casually told me she was going to go to Paris with another man. My throat tightened and I struggled to swallow. This wasn't the same Jasmine who used to sit on the couch with me, talking about our future and dreaming about travel. This was a new Jasmine, a Jasmine who no longer seemed to care about the life we had built together. I took a deep breath, trying to remain calm. "Paris? With Greg?" I repeated, my voice barely a whisper. It didn't make sense. Greg had been at the party, sure, but he was just an acquaintance. Was this some kind of joke? Or had I missed something? "Yes," she replied, her voice light, like it was no big deal. "I know it might seem sudden, but it just feels right. I need this. I need to discover who I really am, away from all of this. Away from all the responsibilities, the expectations. I've worked so hard on myself, and I think this is the perfect opportunity to embrace the new me." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. The new me. It wasn't us anymore. It was her journey, her self-discovery, her transformation. And I wasn't part of it. Not anymore. I stared at her, trying to process everything she had just said. "I don't understand. We've been planning trips for years, together. Paris was always something we talked about." She reached out and placed a hand on mine, her touch light, but there was no real connection behind it. "I know, Adam. But this is different. This isn't about you and me. It's about me. It's time for me to live for myself." The words stung, but I forced a smile. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of seeing how deeply she was cutting into me. I had always supported her, always tried to be the understanding husband, but this felt like betrayal. And I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something more was going on, something deeper than just a self-discovery trip. "Okay," I said, trying to sound calm, but my voice cracked. "When are you leaving?" "Next month," she said with a bright smile. "Greg and I are finalizing the details. It's going to be incredible, Adam. You'll see. I'm doing this for me." The words echoed in my mind long after she had gone to bed. I stayed up late, staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of it all. A part of me wanted to believe her, wanted to trust that this was just a spontaneous decision, a one-off adventure. But deep down, I knew it wasn't just about a trip to Paris. Jasmine wasn't searching for herself in Paris. She was searching for something else. She was searching for validation, for excitement, for someone who could see her as she wanted to be seen. And I wasn't the man she needed anymore. The thought hit me like a tidal wave, knocking the breath out of me. I had tried to be the husband who supported her, who encouraged her transformation, but now I was left wondering when I had stopped being enough. When had she decided that I wasn't enough for her? And more importantly, when had she started to look for someone else to fill that void? The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. She wasn't going to Paris just for herself. She was going because of Greg. Greg, who had always been around, who had always admired her from the sidelines. Greg, who was the kind of man who could offer her the attention she was now so desperate for. And I had become nothing more than a silent bystander in her new world. I could feel the anger building inside me, but I knew it wasn't the time to confront her. Not yet. I had to be sure, had to gather the pieces of the puzzle before I made any rash decisions. But one thing was certain, I could no longer ignore the feeling that something was terribly wrong. Jasmine had changed. And I had no idea where I fit into this new version of her life. The days after Jasmine's announcement about Paris felt like a blur. I spent most of them in a haze trying to pretend everything was fine when deep down I knew it wasn't. Jasmine was more animated than ever, consumed by the excitement of her upcoming trip. Every conversation seemed to circle back to her plans with Greg, how they'd explore the city, take pictures in front of the Eiffel Tower, and create memories that would last a lifetime. As if I didn't exist. As if we didn't exist anymore. I tried to push aside the growing suspicion gnawing at me. Maybe I was overthinking things. Maybe this was just Jasmine being Jasmine, spontaneous, carefree, and searching for something that was hers and hers alone. But deep down I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I kept telling myself that it was just her needing space, needing a break, but there was a voice in the back of my head telling me it was more than that. The tension continued to build until I couldn't ignore it any longer. One evening, as Jasmine was busy packing for her trip, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I wasn't proud of it, but I couldn't just sit idly by while everything I had known for 12 years seemed to crumble before my eyes. I had to know the truth. I hired a private investigator. I didn't tell Jasmine. I didn't want to give her a reason to deflect, to manipulate the situation. I just needed to know if my suspicions were justified. I needed to know if my wife, the woman I had loved and trusted, had truly crossed a line that I could never come back from. The investigator didn't take long. A couple of days maybe. When the report came in, I didn't know what to expect. I was hoping I was wrong, hoping this was all just a misunderstanding. But deep down I feared the worst. The report was clear. Jasmine and Greg had been seeing each other for months. Their conversations weren't just casual chats about Paris or business. They were intimate, flirtatious. They had shared several private dinners, gone on walks, and spent time together in ways that were far beyond innocent. The investigator had even managed to capture a few photos of them. Greg's hand resting casually on Jasmine's lower back as they stood close together in a park. Another photo showed them laughing, their faces inches apart, clearly comfortable with the intimacy between them. I sat there, staring at the pictures in my hands. Each image felt like a slap to the face. I thought I knew my wife. I thought we had built a life together. But this was something else. It wasn't just a random fling, it was an affair. And the worst part was she wasn't even trying to hide it. She had been living this double life and I had been none the wiser. The anger hit me like a wave. My hands shook as I folded the report, trying to push the bile rising in my throat back down. I wanted to confront her right then and there, to shout at her, to demand an explanation. But I knew that wouldn't do any good. Jasmine had already made her choice. And now I had to make mine. The following morning, Jasmine seemed to have no idea what was coming. She was bustling around the house, gathering her things for Paris, talking about how much she couldn't wait to experience life outside of our little bubble. I barely heard her words. All I could focus on was the report sitting in my pocket, the weight of the truth pressing down on me. At breakfast I made a decision. Jasmine, I said quietly, my voice almost foreign to me, we need to talk. She stopped mid-sentence, her eyes flickering up from her phone, her expression still light. What's up, babe? I know about you and Greg, I said, the words coming out in a steady stream. There was no hesitation, no going back. I had to say it. I had to confront her with the truth. For a moment she froze. The silence between us felt suffocating, her face unreadable. Then she slowly placed her phone down on the table and met my gaze. What do you mean? Her voice was steady, too steady, as if she had rehearsed this moment. I know about the affair, I continued, my voice still calm, though my insides were anything but. The investigator found everything, your dinners, your dates, your time together. Jasmine, I'm not stupid. I know you've been seeing him. Her eyes widened and for a moment I saw a flicker of something, guilt, maybe? But it was gone as quickly as it came. Instead, she sat back in her chair, folding her arms across her chest. You hired a private investigator? She asked, the edge of disbelief in her voice. I had to know the truth, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. And now I do. Jasmine didn't respond right away. Instead, she just stared at me, her eyes calculating like she was weighing how best to respond. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she sighed deeply and leaned forward. "Adam," she began, her voice soft but firm, "I never meant for you to find out this way. But yes, it's true. Greg and we've been spending time together. It's been going on for a while now. And I don't regret it." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had known deep down that this was coming, but hearing her admit it out loud made it all the more real. "I'm not sorry for it," she continued, her gaze never wavering from mine. "I needed this. I needed to feel wanted, to feel alive again. I've spent so many years putting everyone else's needs first. Our kids, you, the house, our life. But I've been lost, Adam. I've been suffocating and I had to break free." Her words stung, cutting deeper than I ever thought possible. "And me?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "What about our life? What about what we had?" She didn't flinch. "I don't know. I think I lost sight of that somewhere along the way. I'm not the same person I was when we got married. I've changed. I've realized that I need more than just you and the kids. I need to be someone else, someone who's me and not just a wife or a mother." I felt my world crumble around me, the foundation of everything we had built together shattering in an instant. She wasn't the woman I had married. And now I wasn't sure I even knew who she was. Jasmine stood up from the table, her eyes never leaving mine. "I'm going to Paris, Adam. I've already made my decision. I need this. And I hope you understand." The words felt like a slap. I couldn't even respond, couldn't even form the words to express the pain that was now suffocating me. She was already gone. In her mind, she had already checked out, already moved on. And as she walked away, I realized that I had lost her. And no amount of trying to fix things would ever bring her back. The days after our conversation felt like a blur. Jasmine's confession hung heavy in the air between us, suffocating every attempt at normalcy. She was preparing for her trip to Paris, and I was trying to navigate a world where everything I had believed in had been shattered. We moved through the motions of daily life, but it felt like we were both living in separate realities, unable, or unwilling, to bridge the growing divide between us. Jasmine had already made up her mind. There was no turning back now. I could see it in the way she talked about the trip, the way she packed her bags as if this was her moment of freedom. Her words about needing to be herself echoed in my mind over and over, a constant reminder of the woman she had become. I wanted to fight for us, for what we had once shared, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized that I wasn't fighting for her anymore. I was fighting for an illusion. The woman she had been had slipped away, replaced by someone I didn't recognize, someone who didn't seem to care about the life we had built together. I spent my nights in silence, pacing the house, wrestling with the anger and hurt that churned inside me. Jasmine, on the other hand, seemed completely at peace with the decision she had made. It was as if she had found the key to unlocking a new, exciting chapter of her life. And I was left to pick up the pieces of my broken heart. The night before she left, I found myself standing in our living room, watching her pack the last of her things. She had grown so distant, so disconnected from me, that even now, I couldn't seem to find the words to make her stay. I wanted to beg her, to tell her how much I loved her, how much I wanted to fix everything. But I couldn't. I had learned painfully that there was nothing left to fix. "Adam," she said, breaking the silence. She was standing in the doorway, her suitcase in hand. "I want you to know that this trip is important to me. I'm not doing this to hurt you." "I know," I replied, though I didn't believe it. "I know you're doing what you need to do." Her eyes softened just for a moment before she looked away. "You'll be fine," she said, her voice quiet. "You deserve someone who can give you everything you need. Someone who's fully committed. I know I haven't been that person for a while, but I hope one day you'll understand." The words stung, but I didn't react. I couldn't. She was already gone. In her mind, she had already moved on, and no amount of pleading could change that. "I'll be fine," I echoed, though I didn't believe it. How could I be fine when the person I loved had left me behind? When the person I had trusted had chosen someone else, chosen herself above everything else? Jasmine didn't wait for me to say anything more. She picked up her suitcase and walked toward the door, her steps slow but determined. I stood there watching her go, knowing that once she stepped outside, she wouldn't be coming back. The door closed behind her with a soft click, and in that moment, it felt as if my whole world had just crumbled to dust. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Instead, I sat in the living room, staring at the empty space where she had once sat, trying to come to terms with the fact that she was gone. It wasn't just the marriage that was over, it was everything. The love, the trust, the life we had built together. It was all gone and I was left to pick up the pieces of my broken heart. The next morning I woke up to an empty house. The silence was deafening. For the first time in years, I wasn't sure where I fit in this world. Jasmine had gone, chasing something that I could never give her, and I was left to figure out who I was without her. The future that I had once envisioned, the life we had planned together, seemed like a distant memory now, one that I couldn't reach. I decided to do something for myself. For the first time in a long time, I focused on my own needs. I signed up for a fitness class, something I had put off for years. I started reconnecting with friends I had lost touch with, spending time with people who made me feel whole. I began to explore the things that made me happy, things I had forgotten about while I had been so consumed with our marriage. I took a trip on my own, something I had always wanted to do but had never gotten around to. It wasn't Paris, but it didn't matter. It was mine. It was my way of reclaiming a part of myself that had been buried for so long. And in that process I began to heal. Slowly but surely I started to feel like myself again. Jasmine's return came weeks later. She walked into the house with that same sense of excitement, as if nothing had changed. But I had changed. I had learned that I was more than just her husband. I was more than the man she had forgotten about in her search for validation and independence. I was me, and that was enough. She tried to talk to me, tried to explain how her time in Paris had been transformative. She seemed hopeful, as if we could pick up where we had left off. But I couldn't do it. I couldn't pretend that nothing had happened. I couldn't ignore the fact that she had chosen to leave me, to find herself in the arms of another man. I stood firm, realizing that I didn't need her to complete me. I didn't need her to validate me. I was enough just as I was. And no amount of regret or promises could change the fact that she had abandoned me when I needed her most. I can't go back, I said, my voice steady. I can't pretend that everything is okay. You made your choice, Jasmine. And now I have to make mine. She looked at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of regret and disbelief. But I didn't waver. I had already made my decision. I was done living in the shadow of her vanity, of her quest for external validation. I deserved more than that. I deserved a love built on trust, respect, and genuine connection. I'm moving on, I said, the words feeling right for the first time in a long while. Jasmine stood there for a moment as if waiting for me to change my mind. But I didn't. And when she turned to leave, I felt something inside me shift. I wasn't sad. I wasn't angry. I was free. And for the first time in a long time, I knew that I was going to be okay.